Stick around when we talk about the Apostles' Creed and all of this in 90 seconds. The Apostles' Creed has a bit of a legacy behind it. A lot of people have heard probably this story that the Apostles' Creed, hence the name, was written by each of the 12 apostles, that each contributed a line of the text, and so on and so forth. This is completely a myth. There's nothing to this. Rather, the Apostles' Creed comes out of a lot of different creedal affirmations of the 2nd century. We don't actually have a smoking gun here. We don't know where it comes from specifically. We do know of a number of these types of baptismal creeds, though, from the time of the 2nd century, again, up during the times of persecution, after the times of the apostles, before the conversion of Constantine and others. And what would generally happen is, whenever one converted, it was a common practice for someone to spend up to a year as what we call a catechumate, or someone who is learning the faith that they now profess, learning some of the basics of biblical orthodoxy or faith, all these types of things. And then after a year, you would come to baptism, and it would be asked of you, Christian, what do you believe? And one would rattle off the things that they had learned, often in a formulaic style like a creed. And we know, for example, of one of these types of creeds called the Old Roman Creed, which in many ways is something like the backbone to what we today call the Apostles' Creed. But at some point, much later, mind you, 3rd century, 4th century around there, we begin to see people referring to the Apostles' Creed more or less as a unit, more or less as a known entity of the Christian faith. And it's around this time also that some of the myths about it being written by the apostles themselves are sometimes written down or attributed in the stories. So in other words, the Apostles' Creed is one of these baptismal creeds, one of these basic confessions of faith that many Christians and many churches in the 2nd century would affirm. By the 3rd or 4th century, though, by some time later, it becomes, you might say, an idealized example of many of these types of things. The importance of it, though, is that Christians were always a confessing bunch. They were always a creedal bunch, so that when one came to faith, a creed was often the way that one was led through the basics of what all Christians confess.